Well, many of us hesitate to get involved in some things. There will be things that come up in our life, and we will kind of hesitate to get involved. It's like we don't really want to get our hands dirty, and so we kind of shy away from getting involved. Earlier this week, my son, Scott, had a choir concert at school. And so we went to take him early and so that he could get there and get set up and all that. And we were driving in the car. We were a couple minutes late, and so the plan was, instead of parking and then all walking in together, I was planning to just take him around the driveway of the school and then let him out and then go park. And so we were going down the little road, and cars were moving very slowly because there were lots of pedestrians around. But as we were going down the road, there was this truck coming the other way. And when the truck got right up close to us, it was just about to pass us, a little dog jumped out of the side of the truck. And it had a rope around its neck that was tied inside the truck, and so it was just dangling off the side of the truck. And its little paws were just going like this. It was trying to climb back up into the truck, but it happened to fall right where the wheel was spinning. And so it was just this mess of a scene. And all of us in the car, we were just like, we couldn't believe what we were seeing. It was like, you kind of like, you want to look because you want to make sure the dog's okay, but you don't want to look because you don't want to see anything happen. And it was so scary. Well, thankfully, the dog jumped out on the driver's side, and he saw the dog in the rear view mirror, and he stopped. He just stopped right there in the road, and he jumped out of his truck, and he ran, and he swooped up his dog, and he set it into the back of the truck. And we continued around, and we made a left turn into the driveway, and so we could kind of see the whole thing. And he was just, he was petting the dog, and he was just loving on the dog, and I don't know. I wondered if he was even crying because it was such a scary thing. But he was just stroking the dog, and I could see the little dog's tail, and it started going like this. And so it was a happy tail. And so I decided in my mind, okay, the dog's okay. Nothing, because it wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't okay. At least that's what I'm assuming. I'm not a veterinarian, but I don't, but happy tail. So anyway, so we continued. But my wife, who has the heart the size of Texas, she said, we need to ask that man if he would give us that dog, because that dog needs to be our dog. Let's ask him if he would give it to us, because he's not taking care of that dog, and we can take care of that dog. Please, let me just get out and ask him if he would give us that dog. I've seen this before with her. We actually had a human being living with, we've had dogs coming, but we've had, that don't stay forever because we get sick of them, and, but we had this one girl stay with us. She was only supposed to stay for a week, and she ended up staying for 6 months. And so I was like, okay, I know where that's going. And so I said, no. We are not going to, we will do no such thing. That dog belongs to that man. That was an accident. It would be rude to even ask the man for his dog. You don't do, that's, come on, we're having a society here. You don't do that. And so we did not get the dog. And we went to park, and as I was thinking about it, what I realized is that I really, even if the man were willing to give us the dog, I did not want to get involved. A lot of times I'll go through life and I'll see stuff, and I work in a place. I have this job at this church where I see a lot of stuff, and a lot of times I just don't want to get involved, if I'm really honest. Because I have my own thing going on. I don't want to get involved in that. I've got enough on my plate to take on a dog, and so. But I think we're all a little bit like that. I think we all are aware of things that are going on in the world that are not right. And though we may know they're not right, and we know that maybe we could do something about it, we shy away, and we we just keep going with what we're doing because we don't want to get our hands dirty. And a lot of us will say things about what's going on. We'll say, the teens today, they have no moral compass, and yet how many of us are mentoring a teenager? We'll say things like, it is a terrible thing that people are out of work and that there are not enough jobs, but how many of us are working to create jobs? How many of us are involved in job training? It's a terrible thing that kids are growing up without the ability to read, but how many of us are helping children learn to read? We know what the problems are, but we don't necessarily want to get our hands dirty to do the work that we need to do. I've been in ministry for 12 years, and I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and they've said to me, the church really needs to do, X, Y, and Z. But when I talk with the person, I realize what they mean is, you, pastor, need to do X, Y, and Z. They're not actually interested themselves in doing it. They want somebody else to do it. And yet, we serve a God who, thankfully, is not like that. In John chapter 1, Scott read these verses. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. In the beginning, God had an intention for how life was supposed to be. In the beginning, when God created everything, He created creation with an original blessing. Before the original sin, there was original blessing. And the life that we see Adam and Eve having in the garden is the life that God intended it. They worked, because work was actually a part of what life was supposed to be about. That was a hoe or a shovel or something in the garden. Sorry. And they had free communication with God, and they were happy, and they were joyful, and everything was as God intended it. But God created creation after His own image. He created us in His own image, and part of that included the ability to choose. And along with the ability to choose is the ability, the freedom to choose for the things of God or against the things of God. And because we had the freedom to choose against the things of God, we eventually did choose against the things of God. And humanity, the biblical witness is that humanity has been in a state of disrepair since then. And we are in a state of needing healing. And so as we walk through scriptures, we read stories about how God keeps reaching toward people, wanting to restore us to that original blessing. Finally, He comes in the person of Jesus. And the gospel witness is that the Word, who was with God and was God, became flesh. The Word became flesh and lived among us. The Word became skin and blood and bone and brain and feet and all that comes with being a human being. He knew what it felt like to be hungry. He knew what it felt like to be humiliated. He knew all of the things that we experience. He became one of us. He was totally willing to get His hands dirty. And God desires a closeness with us, an extreme closeness with us. There is this notion that God is far away, far away, way up there, wherever up there is. And there is that notion. And Bette Midler sings that song, From a Distance, God is Watching Us. It's a beautiful tune, but the lyrics are horrible because I don't think God is just at a distance. God is right here. God is right with us. And what we see with the life of Jesus, when we see this Word become flesh, what we see is that He walks with people, and He enters into people's suffering, and He helps people, and He heals people. God walks with you in your life, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you want Him to or not. I believe God is walking with you through every experience that you have, in your struggles in your marriage, in your struggles with your business, in your struggles with school, God is walking with you, right next to you, right with you. And we believe in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul says that we, baptized Christians, we are the body of Christ. And so therefore, our job is to reflect the character of Christ in the world. That Christ has come to live inside of us. The intimacy is so powerful and so palpable that Christ has actually taken residence in us as the Holy Spirit. And we then are to reflect that kind of divine image that is not afraid to get its hands dirty. We are an everyday people loved by an everyday God who are called to love people every day. We are called to get our hands dirty, to be involved in people's lives. And it could be that God was calling me to talk to that man about his dog, but because I was so focused on my own thing, I ignored it. Maybe Amy was having not just a stroke of, enthusiastic, kind of ridiculous amount of love like she always has, but she was actually being a prophet. I don't know. Maybe. And I shot her down. I don't know. But there are times in our lives when God is asking us to get involved in other people's lives. There are times when God is asking us to get our hands dirty and get into things. And sometimes we say no. But when we say yes, I will do it, then there is the possibility of discovering a tremendous, powerful amount of joy. In fact, real joy comes when we get involved in people's lives. Real joy gets discovered when everyday people who are loved by an everyday God start loving people wherever they are, no matter what they're going through. It is incredibly powerful when the people of God do that. The heartbeat of this church is to be everyday people loved by an everyday God. That is who this church is. That's who this church has been for a long time. That is who this church will be in its future. We are a church that is willing to get our hands dirty. We are a church that is willing to get engaged and get involved in people's lives. We are a church that knows that joy. And what a joy it is. One of my favorite characters is Big Bird. And here's a picture of Big Bird. He's talking with Fozzie the Bear, who is on his way with his friend Kermit the Frog to Hollywood to make it big in the movies. This was a documentary about the Muppets and called the Muppet Movie. I'm just kidding. It's not really true. But Fozzie and Kermit are on their way to make it big in Hollywood, and and Big Bird comes walking down the street, and they stop and they talk to him. And they say, "Hey, you want to come with us to Hollywood?" And he goes, "No, because I'm on my way to New York City. I'm gonna try to break into public television," and which he has. And Big Bird has been a character that has brought joy to children for decades. And inside of that character, Big Bird is an everyday guy. His name is Carol Spinney. And he's just a normal person, just like us. But he has been the person inside of Big Bird all these years. And I recently discovered this story that he shared, and I want to read this story to you that he tells. He says, "I got a letter from a fan who said his little boy, who was 5 years old, his name was Joey, he was dying of cancer. And he was so ill, the little boy knew he was dying. So the man in his letter asked if I would call the little boy. He said the only thing that cheered him at all in his fading state was to see Big Bird on television. So once in a while, he wouldn't see Big Bird on some days because he wasn't necessarily in every show. So he asked, could I telephone him and talk to the boy, tell him what a good boy he's been? So I took a while to look up a phone because this was before cell phones. And they got a long cord to bring a phone to the boy. And I had Big Bird say, hello, "Hello, Joey, it's me, Big Bird." So he said, "Is it really you, Big Bird?" "Yes, it is." I chatted a while with him, about 10 minutes, and he said, "I'm glad you're my friend, Big Bird." And I said, "I'd better let you go now." He said, "Thank you for calling me Big Bird. You're my friend. You make me happy." And it turns out his father and mother were sitting with him when the phone call came, and he was very, very ill that day. And they called the parents in because they weren't sure how long he'd last. And so his father wrote to me right away and said, "Thank you. Thank you." Hadn't seen him smile since October, and this was in March. And when the phone was hung up, he said, "Big Bird called me. He's my friend." And he closed his eyes, and he passed away. And I could see that what I say to children can be very important. And he said, "We haven't seen our little boy smile in months. He smiled as he passed away. It was a gift to us. Thank you." In the power of Jesus Christ and in his name, we can do this. We can be an everyday people loved by an everyday God, loving people every day, where they are, in the circumstances that they are in. And it brings joy. And it helps the world become that place that God had dreamed for it to be from the beginning. When we do these things, we usher in the kingdom.